Welcome to the Connected Leaders Academy virtual conference designed to reshape your vision of transformation. As we navigate the evolving business landscape, our speakers will unveil innovative strategies to manage and initiate change. Prepare to adapt, innovate, and lead, ensuring your role as a catalyst in this transformative era.
Hi, I'm Raquel, your GPS for success. And as leaders, we're always trying to figure out, how do we inspire others around us? How do we stay in our zone of genius? And how do we flow in a way that's going to multiply our results? Because that's what we really want. And so what I'm promising you is, in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you three things. One, I'm going to give you a clear framework to maintain your flow state, which is your zone of genius. Secondly, I'm going to give you proven strategies to multiply your leadership impact. And lastly, I'm going to help you have a renewed confidence so that way you can make decisive moves and inspire others. So I wanted to start with one of the things. And everything we're going to be talking about today is actually foundational, and you're going to see how it weaves all together. But the very first thing I want to start off with is that everything you want is in the gift of someone else. So it's so important to keep that in mind, because that is really the secret sauce to everything that you want. Everyone has something to contribute. Everyone has a gifting, has a talent. And actually, everybody is motivated, and maybe not motivated the way you are, which we'll touch upon. When I was working in corporate, my last corporate job, I worked for a PR company. It was the largest independent PR company in the world. And in that time, and this is how I learned the lessons, and this is the part about wisdom, is that we want to learn from other people's mistakes so that way we don't go into the pitfalls. I was working my job, I loved it, and then there were a couple of staff members who decided that they were going to be frenemies, and they actually tried to get me fired. Because I had already a good reputation of my leadership, I was actually pulled into a meeting and with my boss and HR and attorneys because they were running a story about me in their heads that just was not accurate. And so what happened is that I was pretty much put on probation, and my boss put his reputation on the line and said, Raquel, we'll fix it. And they looked at me and said, Raquel, fix it. I was like, okay, I will fix it. But I didn't know what I was going to do to fix this erroneous scenario that was running and was really starting to tarnish my reputation over things that were just not true. And so what did I do? What do we do, right? As leaders, when things happen, we look and we search out and we pivot. And in that, I knew intrinsically that, right, everything I want is in the gift of someone else. And maybe there were just some things that I was not pulling out of them, their gifting, their way of viewing things, their motivations. And so I started to study. I started to study personality gift clusters. And as I did that, I started to see immediate results. And that's the thing, is that you might be in a scenario where people are saying things against you, setting things up, even for your downfall. But what I was thinking about today was that Abraham Lincoln, I think it's Abraham Lincoln quote, about how do you turn your enemies, right? You make them into friends. Within a year, those same people that were trying to get me fired ended up being my evangelists. And they're like, oh, Raquel changed so much. I didn't. Actually, I was still the same person. I still had the same character. I was still delivering everything that I was delivering to them before, but I recognized that truth, that everything I want is in the gift of someone else. And then I took ownership. How was I not communicating in a way to pull that out of them? For me, I found the easiest way to connect with people is really studying the DISC model, DISC. And I was able to learn it so fast and be able to leverage that knowledge. Everything that people believe, myself and you included, is just a story. It is just a story that we believe. And understanding that, I was able to then change the story that they believed about me. There's this other misnomer about being a self-made person. There is no such thing because everything you want is in the gift of someone else. And this is one of the things is to remember over and over again, which leads me to the next thing about that everyone is motivated, but maybe not the way you are. And what happens is that if you are a natural born leader, and all of us are, but we lead differently. But for those who have more of a dominant personality, where they just feel very big when they walk into the room, that's what I'm calling a natural born leader. And so if you have this kind of dominant energy, this dominant personality, what happens is that you can misread people and think that maybe they're lazy, but they're not lazy. They just have a slower pace of life. So I wanted to give you just some quick tips on how to really motivate people by first figuring out what energy they're actually in. And so a natural born leader, they're going to talk fast, they're going to think fast. If you're speaking to them, they might give you that wave of hurry up, pick up this pace. They want to be spoken to in bullet points. They are huge visionaries. And while all leaders are huge visionaries, that's what they focus on. If you start to speak to them in the details, they can get irritated because they don't want to go into the weeds, at least not until they're ready to. So it's something to keep in mind when you are communicating with a natural born leader. And then there are those that I call the influencers. And you might know them, generally speaking, they're generally speaking. And they're the life of the party. They're the person that you want to bring into a party, but you're not going to ask them to bring anything because they'll forget, you're like, bring napkins, bring some soda, bring some plasticware, things that are not going to hurt your party because, they go into what we call squirrel mode. They like shiny objects. Their clothes are usually very colorful, but they're very creative, very innovative. And again, not that we don't all have these traits, but it just depends on the situation, how we're naturally wired to succeed. And if you're naturally wired to succeed leading with that influencer energy, then those are things as well. They love to tell a story. They love to listen to a story. So again, going back to the first thing of everything you want is in the gift of someone else. If you are not that kind of energy, if you want to connect with that kind of person, you want to tell them stories. And you also want to make sure that you're not giving them a lot of details either, because they are people. And so they might nod and they might smile and they might even agree with what you're saying, but they probably have checked out. So those are the things to really recognize when you're dealing with somebody who has a high influencer, creative kind of personality. Sometimes they get misdiagnosed and called ADD or ADHD. It's actually just the way their brain works. And it's interesting because for these kinds of people who have this kind of energy, a lot of inventions actually come out of them because they're so open, so creative, so innovative. So if you're looking for innovation, you want to look for somebody with that personality gift cluster. And then the next one is what I call the salt of the earth. And you know who they are. They're the person that you can always count on. They're the backbone of everything. They're the ones who, their clothes, if you think about it, is very soft, very huggable. They have this kumbaya kind of energy, very like golden retriever kind of energy. And so in those, for them, right, they have a slower pace of life. It's not that they're slow, is that they're slower than the natural born leader and the influencer. Right? Because the influencer and the natural born leader, that's what they have in common. They like to move fast. The natural born leader, that person wants results. For the influencer, this is the main thing you need to know about them, the F word. Is it fun? If you can make it fun for them, then you're going to get their attention. Now, to the natural born leader, the natural born leader might look at the influencer and think, grow up already, be an adult. Not everything is fun. But every personality gift cluster is here for a reason. And what the influencer does is to remind us to get back to that childlike state, because that's where you're most creative, most innovative, and that's where you can really enjoy life. For the salt of the earth, what's important to them? Family, friends, mission. That's what's important to them. So when you're connecting with the salt of the earth, it's understanding their motivations, because the motivation for a natural born leader normally is something success. They love to be the one that is known for a certain thing. They might really gravitate toward even high-end brands, things like that, because of the status. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody is beautifully and wonderfully made. And so if you are a salt of the earth, you might misjudge a natural born leader and think that they're materialistic, or that they're not really focusing on the things that are important. But that's not true. That is important to them, because we need people like that. We need people to be able to have the vision, to hold the vision, to be able to think bigger than life, to own the space, because that is the gift that the natural born leader gives us, by being able to witness that and to be like, it's okay to come into the spotlight. It is okay for us to own our space. It is okay for us to own our expertise. And so for the salt of the earth, they might have a poster. It says, with you've probably seen it. It looks like a cat. It's like, hang in there, baby. Because that is what's important to them. They are so gifted at collaboration. They are so gifted at making sure that everybody feels seen and welcomed. They are so good at making sure that the team is being resourceful. That is part of their gifting. So when you're thinking about or trying to connect to somebody who is a salt of the earth, then you want to, if you're a natural born leader or an influencer, you want to slow down your speed of your speaking just a little bit, slowing down your pace just a little bit, because it's part of the mirroring. They will feel connected. Ask them about their family, their mission, their friends, what is important to them, their vacations. And again, they have a slower pace of life than the natural born leader or the influencer. And so understanding that, even in some of the things that they do for working. So if you're used to doing some things really, really fast, and then you have somebody on your team who is slower than you, they're not less intelligent. It's not like they're not taking it seriously, but they are highly resourceful and they want to do it well. So they're going to go slower. And these are the kind of people who really understand the details. If you're looking for a team member, you're like, okay, I have this vision, and now I have this creative component. How can we pull this off? That is really one of the genius natural giftings of a salt of the earth, because they are highly resourceful. They can take your vision, natural born leader. They can take your creativity, influencer, then look at what you already have. I'm like, okay, based on what you already have, this is how you can do it. This is what you can leverage what you're doing right now. And then we move into the critical thinker. And the critical thinker probably has the slowest pace of life, because what motivates them? What motivates them is to be the expert. What motivates them is knowledge. What motivates them is being able to do things as perfectly as possible. So because of that, they have the slowest pace. So how can you recognize them? They usually are wearing all kinds of shades of beige. So you might look at them and talking about like pants, and they have usually like a monotone voice, and it's very slow. So they will be speaking at a slower pace. And if you ask them about their pant colors, they're like, well, it's beige. And they're like, no, it's eggshell, it's off-white, it's white, it's cream. And you're like, dude, that's all beige. But they are very good at seeing the pitfalls. And so with critical thinkers, they have been mislabeled as negative Nellies. They have been mislabeled as party poopers, but they're not. Their genius, their natural genius is to be able to poke holes. This is what you need actually in a true mastermind. People like to use that word, but they're actually not using it correctly, because a mastermind has a vision and then everybody's working toward that vision. So let's call it another word, a project. So let's say you have a project and you want it to be very successful. You need somebody who is the natural born leader. That person is going to cast a vision for the project. Then you want to bring in the influencer, because they're going to come in with the creativity, the insight, the innovation. And then between the influencer and the natural born leader, you're going to flush out the vision even more. Then you want to hand it over to the salt of the earth person, because they're going to be able to see what do you already have again in your hands that you can leverage in order for you to do it with the most amount of profit, right? Because you're leveraging your own resources. Then you give it to the to the critical thinker to punch holes in it. That is their gift. Critical thinkers save us so much money, so much time, so much energy, because they're able to see naturally how it's not going to work. And so what happens, again, going back to the first thing, everything you want is in the gift of someone else. So if you're working on a project and you prematurely give it to the critical thinker, somebody like the influencer, because they're a people person, might feel offended or might feel hurt that their idea seems to have so many holes in it that then they might get deflated, like it can't happen. But when you realize that the critical thinker, because of their ability to punch holes in things, that they are actually saving you time, you can then come to that conversation with that in mind. And then you can actually look forward to them punching holes in it, using their expertise, because that's their motivation. I mean, once you hand it over to a critical thinker and you're an expert, punch holes in it. And they're like rolling up their sleeves, like, yes, I am punching holes. I'm gonna punch holes in this baby. And then you're like, oh, thank you. Let me consider everything that you've given to me. They, again, have the slowest pace of life. And so because their pace is slower than all the other personality gift clusters, it will take them some time. So if you need to have it at a certain timetable, you want to make sure to keep that in mind, because of their natural clock is to go slower, because expertise and perfection, and to make sure that the data is good, is going to take them a little while. Then you want to make sure to give them that timetable and to give them plenty of time in order for them to do that for you. It's very close to the salt of the earth, that kumbaya person who's the team person. They also, again, have that slower pace of life, and they don't like change. They're like the guardians. And even though we're leaders and we know that we need to pivot, if that is the way you are wired to succeed, there is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. That's the way you're wired. And so you can honor that. If you have somebody that you're working with that is in that personality gift cluster, then what I have found with my clients and with working in corporate, that for some reason, 3 weeks for a major change is the sweet spot. If you're going to have a big change in the life of the company, in the life of your company, and if you're using this for even in your family, there's going to be a big change. Give them, we can't always do that because life happens. But for the most part, if you can keep that in mind, their sweet spot of being able to manage the change is about 3 weeks. My daughter, I have 3 kids, and my daughter's the oldest. that's one of her primary personality gift clusters. And so I found that that it works with her too. So these things work in all areas of her life. You can transmute this everywhere because, again, everything you want is in the gift of someone else. And when we're having major changes of either moving or something else like that, some other family things that would come up, I started to use this with her and allow her the space to hem and to haul and to kind of discuss and be not really buying into the change because, again, salt of the earth is the guardian. So the salt of the earth needs time. So as much as possible, just give them the gift of time and don't expect them, if you're a natural born leader or an influencer, to just pivot automatically. That's one of the things that I had to learn because now we're all four of them. It just depends on the situation and our natural inclination. But in our neutral state, we're going to be like two of them. For me, in my neutral state, I am a double people person. So I'm a salt of the earth and influencer. But when I'm working, I'm a task animal, which means that I'm a critical thinker, dominant personality. And so I can either, right? I can do the team or I can work by myself. And that's the other thing as well. It's understanding the way people work. For those who are the people, which is the influencer and the salt of the earth, they are externally motivated. That is really important for people to understand if you have a dominant personality or a critical thinker, because the dominant person and the critical thinker, what they have in common is that you can put them in a silo and they can just focus and work. They can use the gift of your will. And so they can just will things because they're naturally wired to succeed that way. So, but they're internally motivated. So if you are internally motivated, you might look at somebody else who's not. They need that people interaction. It actually makes them thrive. So keeping that in mind, again, looking at the way people are wired and honoring that wiring. If you are somebody who is externally motivated, right, you might think that somebody else is not fun or like they don't, they're taking things too seriously, but that's just how they're wired to succeed. That's how you can connect and make the impact because you're watching how other people are designed and then honoring that. So how do you stay in your flow state and maintain it? The first thing is to know yourself, right? In the good book, it says for us to love our neighbors. Yes, but the rest of that is as you love yourself. So how can you really create this impact if you don't know yourself? And lastly, it's around your thoughts. Emotions don't create actions, your thoughts do. Actions are rooted in thoughts. And everything you believe is just a story, just like when I began. Those stories that my staff members had was just a story. They misread me. But once I was able to recognize their genius, the way they were wired to succeed, then I was able to bring that out of them. And they became my evangelists. They became my cheerleaders in a matter of a couple of months. It works really fast. It works really fast. So I know that this has blessed you and you've gotten some aha moments. I'm so happy that I was able to be here with you today. Until next time, may God's richest and best be yours. Bye for now.
Thank you for participating in today's enlightening session. As we transition to our next expert, remember that each strategy and insight is a step toward becoming a transformative leader in your field. Visit connectedleadersacademy.com to stay engaged and informed. The journey of change is ongoing. Let's move forward together.